Hey guys, it's Luke on Sean's channel. As promised, this is the second Runick variant deck profile I'll be bringing you. This is the Sky Striker Runick variant. This is a fun way to play the deck. It combines two of my favorite sort of decks in the game right now, being Runick and Sky Striker. This is one of many ways that people can play it. Some people play it with like no monsters whatsoever. I find running the 3 Raye and the 1 Roze still very good, just to get the proper linkage sort of OTK if that's a line that we need to take. So yeah, this is a Runick Sky Striker deck profile. Please look out for the previous pure Runick deck profile, and in the future we'll be going over the final Runick deck profile, which is a sort of take on Runick that I myself build. But if you think you're going to like Sky Striker Runick the best, then definitely stick with this build. We'll start with all the Sky Striker stuff first. We run 3 copies of Raye and 1 copy of Roze. For those of you who don't know, Raye is the better starter, but Roze is still essential to go for your linkage OTK. But be careful, because a lot of the Runick spell cards, if you activate them, you can't conduct your battle phase. So be careful when you're playing this deck. This is definitely leaning towards sort of a control sort of Sky Striker. Control sort of Sky Striker Runick, more than it is the actual modern aggressive Sky Striker builds you probably see a lot on the likes of Master Duel or any other Yu-Gi-Oh website that you play your duels on. Raye is good because she has a quick effect that she can tribute herself to bring out a Sky Striker Link monster from the extra deck. Also, if a Sky Striker Link monster leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, Raye can bring herself back out from the graveyard, which is very good to just be consistent with monsters you have on the field. Roze is slightly different, but very similar in the sense that when a Sky Striker Ace monster is special summoned while Roze is in your hand, then you can special summon her out. Also, if she's in the graveyard and your opponent's monster in the extra monster zone leaves the field by one of your card effect, you can special summon Roze from the graveyard. For this build, it's essential to have at least 1 Raye and 1 Roze, just because we want the Light and Dark Sky Striker monsters to use our linkage to its full effect. Going over the limited Sky Striker cards, we have the Searcher, we have Hornet drones, we have Multirole. Now, Sky Striker Mobilize Engage. If you control no monster main monster zone, add 1 Sky Striker card from your deck to your hand. And then if there's 3 or more spells in your graveyard, you can draw 1 card. Hornet drones. If you control no monster main monster zone, special summon 1 Sky Striker Ace token. And if you have 3 or more spells in the graveyard, when you activate this card, the token gains 1500 attack and defense. Multirole, however, is more important for this build, because not only is the effect that you can target 1 other card you control, destroy it, then your Sky Striker spells can't be interrupted this turn. We mostly use it for the second effect, that when this is face up on the field, any number of Sky Striker spells activated this turn after Multirole is activated, you can set that many Sky Striker spells from your graveyard, but then banish them when it leaves the field. So it's very good for recycling your Widow Anchor or your Linkage or any of the other Sky Striker spells you may activate, including Hornet drones or Engage. Before we go into the trio of the Sky Striker spells, we also run 1 copy of Shark Cannon, which is target 1 monster your opponent's graveyard, banish that monster, and if you control no monster, and if you have 3 or more spells in the graveyard, you can special summon that monster your side of the field but cannot attack. And then if you kind of just want to use 2 copies of Afterburners, just so we can be as aggressive as possible with this deck. If you control a monster in your main monster zone, target 1 face-up monster on the field, destroy it. Then if you have 3 more spells in the graveyard, you can throw 1 spell trap on the field as well. We'll go into the Sky Striker spells we run 3 of. 3 copies of Widow Anchor. Widow Anchor is an amazing card because it's a quick play spell that if you control no monster main monster zone, you can target 1 face-up effect monster on the field and negate that monster's effects until the end of this turn. And if you have 3 more spells in your graveyard, you can take control of that monster until the end of the turn. This can be good because it doesn't have the restriction like Shark Cannon. The monster you take control of can attack, and also effect negated can be very devastating if you know how to play your cards right against whatever the matchup it is. So Widow Anchor is definitely essential to run 3 of. Also, the fact it's a quick play, if you have Multirole up and you activate Widow Anchor in your turn, you can bring Widow Anchor back out, and then you have monster negates and monster taking control all ready for your opponent's turn. We run 3 copies of Linkage. Linkage is very good. Honestly, if you want to change out your Sky Striker monsters, Raye and Roze, for something else more powerful, maybe like a triple attack or something like that, that's no problem, because Linkage gives you access to all the Sky Strikers in your extra deck, because if you control no monsters in your main monster zone, you can special summon one Sky Striker Ace monster from your extra deck, which will lock you into Sky Striker monsters for the rest of the turn. But you can just use Linkage to bring out one of those Sky Striker monsters from the extra deck. The reason why we run Raye and Roze in this build is because we want to use Linkage's full effect, that if a light and a dark Sky Striker Ace monster is in the graveyard, when this effect resolves, that monster gains 1000 attack, and that's a permanent attack boost as well. So for example, Kagari can gain an extra 1000 attack, and if there's a bunch of spells in your graveyard as well, Geri can get up to a ridiculous amount of attack points. So that wraps it for all of our Sky Striker stuff. Let's start looking at the Runick aspect of the deck. Going into the Runick stuff, I won't be talking too much detail about what each of these cards do. If you want to check out the first Runick deck profile for more in-depth analysis of all these Runick cards, please check that out, but it's just essential to know that you run 3 copies of Runick Fountain. This is the card that allows you to activate your run of quick play spells from your hand during your opponent's turn. When you activate a Runick spell this turn, you can target up to 3 Runick quick play spells from your graveyard, place them at the bottom of the deck in any order, then draw that number of cards. So it's up to 3, so if you activate a Runick card and then you have 2 in the graveyard, you can push the 3 of them to the bottom of your deck from the graveyard and then draw that number of cards. Draw 3, which would be very, very broken in today's format. We have the Searcher, Runick Tip. Now I will say, although I don't want to go into too much detail about all the Runick cards, because you should just check out the previous Runick profile, I will say that all these Runick cards have a primary effect and then a secondary effect. The secondary effect is always the same for all these cards. You special summon one Runick monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone. But all these other Runick cards have a primary effect that mills your opponent's deck. So for example, Runick Tip, you can add one Runick card from your deck to your hand, then banish the top card of your opponent's deck. Please be very careful when you're playing this deck in terms of Sky Striker Runick, because all the Runick cards, when you activate the effect, you have to skip your next battle phase, which kind of cuts you out of your Linkage OTK, or if you plan on attacking one of your Sky Striker monsters next turn. Runick Freezing Change is one to run at 3. You can target one effect monster your opponent controls and negates effects in the end of this turn, then banish top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. This goes hand in hand with Widow Anchor. It's just another great monster effect negate. Definitely consider running it at 3. Flashing Fire, this is, you can target one special monster your opponent controls, destroy it, then banish top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. Runick Destruction, runners at 3, target one spell or trap your opponent controls, destroy it, then banish the top 4 cards of your opponent's deck. Runick Slumber, target one face-up monster on the field. Next time that monster will be destroyed by battle or card effect this turn, it is not destroyed, also cannot attack this turn. And then after that effect is applied, you can banish top 3 cards from your opponent's deck. Smithing Storm is very good because it banishes cards from the top of your opponent's deck up to the number of cards they control. So if they have a deck that builds up huge boards, you're able to banish a multiple number of cards from the top of their deck. Also, Runick Golden Droplet, your opponent draws 1 card, then banish top 4 cards of their deck. Which may seem bad, but just remember all these cards have the secondary effect where you can use them to special summon a Runick monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone. We have 1 copy of Reinforcing the Army, just to search our Raze or Roze, whichever is necessary for the time. And finally, rounding out the deck, I think it's just so important to have monster effect negate, just because we're kind of entering a sort of Kashtira format. Infinite Impermanence is very, very good just for monster effect negate. You can side this out depending on what you're going up against, but I find Imperm a very important main deck. Going into the extra deck now, we'll go over all the Sky Striker stuff. 3 copies of Geri. When she's brought out, she can add a Sky Striker spell from a graveyard to your hand. Also, she gains 100 attack for each spell in your grave. Shizuku, if she special summons this turn during the end phase, you can add a Sky Striker spell that's not listed, that's name isn't in the graveyard, and add it to your hand. Also, she lowers your opponent's monster's attack by 100 for each spell in the grave. And then finally, 1 copy of Hayate. Hayate is great because Hayate can attack directly, and after damage calculation, if Hayate battled, you can send 1 Sky Striker card from your deck to the graveyard. That does it for all the Sky Striker monsters. You can bring them out either with your Sky Striker Ace Raye or Roze. However, you can also use just Linkage itself. You run Line of the Light Charmer and Dharc the Dark Charmer. Raye's a Dharc and Roze is a light, so if your opponent is playing a Dharc heavy deck or a light heavy deck, it's good to bring out either one of these just to steal one of their powerful boss monsters from the graveyard. Also, if they're destroyed, you can search either your Roze or your Raye. Ending it with the Runick side of things, we run 2 copies of Hugin, 2 copies of Munin, and 1 copy of Freki and Geri. These are all the Runick extra deck monsters. This ratio is very good, it fits in well with the extra deck we have, since Sky Strikers are taking up a majority of it. It's good to have at least one of each of all your Runick monsters. If you want a further in-depth analysis of what each of these cards do, please check out the previous profile, but I'll quickly breeze through them right now. Hugin, basically when she's brought out, you can discard a card, add 1 Runick field spell from your deck to your hand. If this card is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can actually put her back into your extra deck. Also, if another card you control be destroyed by card effect, you can banish Hugin instead. Munin, we don't run Runick Allure, so her primary effect to discard a card and then add a Runick continuous spell from her deck to the hand is irrelevant for this build. But Munin, during the end phase, either player's end phase, you gain 1000 life points. Geri is good because when you have like Runick Fountain in your graveyard, when Geri is special summoned, you can add that Runick spell from your graveyard to your hand. Not quick play spells, however, is mostly just for Fountain. And finally, Freki, when an attack is declared involving this card in the extra monster zone, you can banish top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. Neither player takes any battle damage from attacks involving this monster. And if this card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can target 1 Runick quick play spell in the graveyard and add it to your hand. That about does it for the profile. Now I will suggest that I've seen many builds which don't use the Sky Striker main deck monsters at all. They actually just run it like entirely with spells. So if you want to do that, one good option could be running 3 copies of Dimensional Fissure, or even if you want to run main deck monsters, not necessarily the Sky Strikers, you can also side in stuff like Lava Golem, or even any hand traps you think might be very good, depending on what you're playing against. Side it out depending on what you feel is necessary to break your opponent's board. That's what I really like about both Sky Strikers and Runick. They can kind of play around with ratios but what these decks do very well is pretty much recycling resources. So even having one of each card can be very optimal as well. But if there's some cards in here you want to just up the ratios a little bit, maybe Smithing Storm or Runick Droplet, that's no problem at all. Feel free to use this deck in any sort of way you want. I really encourage people to kind of like play around with it, make suggestions and leave them down in the comments. This is just the second type of build that I've made for Runick. Please be sure to check out the previous one, the pure Runick build. And there's going to be one more Runick deck profile coming to the channel very soon, and it'll be the Runick deck that I bring to locals and the one that I try to play competitively. If you have any suggestions for any ways this deck can be improved, any suggestions for future videos, please let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.